Start recording in process. Very good. So tonight we are going to work on Unit 2. We're going to talk a little bit about what autonomy and metacognition is, the differences between them, and also how one can support the other. So for Unit 2, we had different readings that we had to look into for the references. And some of these were autonomy and good language learners. The other one that we had to look into was metacognition, a catalyst in fostering learning. We also had self-regulated learning, the activation of learners' metacognition. We also had those. So we are supposed to work with those readings. And today, the presentation that I have has to do with that in particular. Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, good. Now you have a mic. Good. Nice to see you. We were just getting started. The session is being recorded. So tonight we are going to talk about Unit 2, like I was mentioning now. So for Unit 2, as we can see on the syllabus, we have a specific learning outcome, right? And here we are going to, hang on a second. We are going to talk about learners' autonomy and autonomy in life in general, autonomy and language learning, characteristics of an autonomous learner, and fostering learner autonomy in English teaching and learning. Today, I was looking at the forum and I was giving feedback on the things that you guys started working on, and also the template for the checklist. I was looking at your checklists and I gave feedback based on what was there. I read that some of you had already applied. Good evening, Ovidio. Yes?
Hello, teacher. Yes, I am here. I
Okay.
had a little difficulties in order to get the access, but
You made
thanks
it.
to God, I am here.
That's what's important. Very good.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
as we were
teacher.
just starting, just gonna take note here. All right, so we have a few topics that we are going to talk about. Like I said, on the forum, I already gave feedback to the checklists that were there. Do take it into consideration. Remember that they do need to be validated. And if any questions or doubts, you can always contact me, okay? So I am going to share my screen now so we can start. But before I go, I'm just going to write down your names to make sure that I have this info for the grading part. And we have here a video of Morgos. All right. So here we go. I'm just going to share my screen with you. And let me see. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Yes, now yeah.
Yes, already.
Very good. Thank you. So like I said, we are going to work on Unit 2, which is titled Metacognition in Autonomous Language Learning Environments. Like I said before, we are going to be looking for the meaning of metacognition when it comes related to the autonomous language learning per se. So before we start, I'd like to ask you, what is metacognition to you? What is it? What do you think it relates to?
According to the readings, the metacognition is the way that we use, that we study, how we learn. Is how, yes, it's understanding how we learn.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Fernando?
Teacher, but I would think first watching the word beyond the same text and what Alex is saying. Meta means beyond, and cognition means conscience. Beyond conscience, could it be? What it could mean?
Okay, that's you are on your way. You're on your way. And Ovidio, do you have another idea?
Okay, teacher. So, in my case, I consider metacognition is very important because, in other words, is learn,
Okay.
learn to learn. Okay, learn to learn. This is metacognition, and of course, when we focus on metacognition, we are going to learn different strategies and different ways in order to acquire the knowledge regarding from the different fields like languages or even mathematics and others. So that could facilitate the learning process for us. For that reason, I consider very important. And on the other hand, for example, the metacognition I consider could be related to the autonomy, of course, because in order to reinforce the metacognition, the best way is the autonomy, since I consider is discovering how can I learn different ways, different topics.
Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, in a sense, what you guys are saying is closely related. What Alex mentioned that it had to do with how do we learn, and also, what Fernando mentions of this conscience problem or this conscience purpose to learn something, to go beyond what we just have in front of us. So yeah, basically, we are going to look into metacognition when it comes to language learning. Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. So what I have right here is a little bit of an intro so that we can get closer to the topic itself right now. So we are now evolving every day. Our life is changing, the world is changing, and we need to try and have the ability to take charge of our own learning pace, right? So nowadays, we are in a very complex environment of learning. We can learn in many different ways. If we are truly autonomous, we can pick and choose and decide what is good for our learning purpose. So this particular course is going to look deeper into the concept of autonomy, but we are going to move beyond that traditional classroom model. We are going to try and separate from that model, and explore how we can become more self-directed, reflective, and how can we be a little more strategic when it comes to language use and learning processes. So we are going to talk about foundation of theories on autonomy, also the relationship it has with metacognition and motivation. It's important that we keep that concept in mind, metacognition. This is very important to make us a more effective autonomous learner. Okay, so when we look into metacognition itself, we are going to see that is how do we learn? What do I do to learn? And how can I reflect in the face of what I am learning? So, hang on a second. Now I'm going to move on to the second here. And I have some ideas. We are going to talk about two core concepts. These two core concepts are one, autonomy, and the other one is metacognition. These are twin pillars. They are the same. They take the same place. They are very different things, but they take the same place in the learning process. So when we have effective self-directed learning, we need to think about autonomy and metacognitions. If we lack one of these two, we won't be able to have an effective self-directed learner. Now, this section provides a little bit of an overview of what these foundational ideas are. So we are going to continue here. And when it comes to learner autonomy, we need to be clear on the fact that learner autonomy is not merely just learning by yourself or learning alone. Sometimes when I think that I'm being an autonomous learner is because I'm learning by myself, me, myself, and I. And that is not necessarily the case. To be able to be an autonomous learner, I need to take responsibility and control over the learning process. There, I am being an autonomous learner. If I don't take control and responsibility, I am only studying or learning alone. But I have to take responsibility in the process. And we're going to look further into which type of responsibilities do I have to take. So this represents also how willing am I as a learner to manage my educational journey. How do I manage my educational path, my process? How do I make active participant? How do I make myself an active participant of this learning journey? Now, when we think of our students, we need to motivate or encourage taking responsibility and control over their own learning process. Because students nowadays are thinking that the only thing they can learn is what they take in school. And that's it. Whatever they teach me, whatever they tell me, that's it. I don't have to go any further. So our students need to be constantly encouraged to take control over their learning process, and so that they can become more effective and more empowered. So being connected with what they are learning, it will be very useful for their learning process. Up to now, do we have a question, a comment, anything?
No, that just like here I saw that learning is not about merely learning by yourself or that it's an isolated thing, but one of the readings says also too that we as teachers need to promote collaborative work in the classroom so they can learn from others. And that is one of the things that, for example, in one school that I worked, we cannot make them work in teams. It was impossible. We as teachers couldn't do that in our classroom because that was undisciplined. So that made me think about that. I said, yeah, we don't learn a language specifically alone. We need the other one.
Definitely. We need the other person to be able to communicate. What are languages for? Languages are bridges, bridges among people. Right now, we can have many, many things to learn, but if I don't know your language, we will have that barrier. But now, if we learn English and we are able to communicate in English, English becomes this bridge between different cultures. So nowadays, English is one of the most spoken languages around the world by non-native speakers. So being English the most spoken language around the world by non-native speakers tells us that English has become of utmost importance. So we need to empower our students for them to use it collectively, because we learn a language to be able to talk to other people, learn from other people, exchange cultural events, do all these different things that we cannot do by ourselves, and especially not in a language classroom. So yeah. Okay. So now, when we think about metacognition, I would like to invite you to think about, how do I think? So when we talk about metacognition, we're talking about thinking. So do we really think how we think, or we just think? We naturally just think, and then we give it a lot of thought. If we really give it thought, then new improved ideas come along. So this, defined by Flavel, thinking about thinking, metacognition involves the awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes. How do I think? What do I think? What for do I think it? So it's not only the act of thinking by itself, but it's thinking with a purpose. In this case, the purpose of acquiring a foreign language. Is this internal conversation that I have with myself allowing me to manage my own learning effectively? So if I'm looking at some strategy, if I'm looking at something that is helping, how is it helping? Is it really helping? Or maybe it's not doing what I expected, or maybe it's not working as I thought, or maybe it helps me a little bit, but not too much. Well, we can only achieve that if we think and we take the moment to really connect with our thoughts. So metacognitive knowledge is what you know about yourself as a learner. You know how you learn. This the nature of learning through a task, and those strategies that are available to you. When we think about metacognitive knowledge, we think about, how do I learn? What am I thinking? What are my thoughts good for? Which strategies can I use to learn better? So all those things that are available to me will take me to that understanding. And metacognitive regulation is the active process of planning, monitoring your understanding and progress, evaluating what's happening, evaluating how much did I learn? Did I learn? Did I not complete my goal? That I'm thinking here in the metacognitive knowledge, I'm setting my strategies. I'm thinking, okay, this is the best way for me to learn a specific topic or a specific subject. But when I go to metacognitive regulation, this regulation is giving me the step-by-step. You need to plan, you need to monitor and evaluate. And that's how we are going to help our students become autonomous learners, by giving them the tools for them to become thinkers with a purpose, not just think to think. Sometimes we think, but we're just wasting time because we go around circles and we don't get to a solution. So that's when metacognition comes along. And when metacognition comes in very valuable in that particular manner. So now we are going to talk about the 3 dimensions of autonomy. We are going to consider Oleg with his take on methodological dimension. We will talk about Little with his psychological dimension of autonomy. And finally, we are going to look at Benson's view on content. Okay, this information that I'm giving you has all been taken out, gathering the information from the articles that we were supposed to read up to now. So this will help you take the information and put it together into that reflection that you have to do, right? After you do the checklist. So now we are going to look at the how to, or self-directed learner. And this is the take by Hole. This author defines autonomy as the ability to take charge of one's own learning process. That is his definition of autonomy. This ability that we must have to take and own our learning process. Be engaged, be motivated, and know what we're doing. This perspective emphasizes the practical skills. So, in this view, an autonomous learner is capable of making decisions as learning objectives. What am I going to learn? Why am I going to learn it? What is my objective? What is it for? Content and materials, the self-directed learner is able to choose the different content and materials that will help him achieve his learning objective. Remember that when we plan a class, whatever class it may be, we need to have learning objectives. If we don't know where we're going, we can go anywhere. So if I don't have a clear learning objective, I will not know which content and material will help me to attain this particular goal. Now, another thing that is capable of doing this self-directed learner is to choose methods and techniques which work for him, for his process. Remember that we all we all learn in different ways. So an effective self-directed learner is able to choose techniques and methods. And he is also capable of evaluating his progress and measuring the outcomes. So a self-regulated person, when it comes to learning, knows where he's going, what is he going to use to get there, which steps or which methodology I'm going to use. And finally, he will be capable of evaluating this progress and the outcome. If something goes wrong, then this cycle might repeat itself again. Okay, so this is a cycle that can be used over and over for a student who wants to become a self-directed learner. Okay? Now, when we talk about the learner's mindset, we're going to think about detachment, critical reflection, independent action, and decision making. These four attributes need to be considered by a learner who wants to be self-regulated. Remember that the learner's mindset is important to be able to achieve or attain these goals that he has put out for himself. So according to the author Little, he says that there is a crucial psychological layer defining autonomy. So his definition says that is a capacity for detachment, critical reflection, decision-making, and independent action. He's mentioning this cycle again, but he's using psychological attributes for the student. So a person who wants to become self-regulated learner needs to be able to understand and reflect on what he needs, to detach from what he doesn't know, from what he knows, and be able to find those things that he doesn't know and that he wants to learn. And then he will take independent action. Which steps do I have to take in order for me to understand and learn that I want to learn? And finally, decision making as to how am I going to do it and evaluate it at the end. So this highlights the learner's internal state, right? We talked about a little bit ago, we talked about here in the other, hang on a sec. In this one right here, we talk about on the how to be a self-directed learner. But here we are talking more inside the learner. What else goes inside his head and which is the psychological relationship with his learning process? It's about developing, internal motivation, that perspective that will take me where I need to go, to be confident enough to be able to act independently, right? And this capacity, Little argues that is universal. So this author in particular says that universally speaking, all learners are able to do this self-regulated learning as long as they follow a cycle, they know where they're going, which steps to take, they act upon them accordingly with different strategies, finally evaluate their process and the outcome. So this is important to consider when we're talking about the author Little. When we come to this other author, Benson talks about choosing your path. So this expands a little bit more, arguing that true autonomy is the learner's decision, what and where they learn. Talks about the learner's decision. They need to decide whether what they want to learn, where they want to learn it. So this introduces this dimension that goes beyond how everything is learned to control what's happening around the learner. So when we have a formal context, right? The person is inside this formal context and he's looking or she's looking for his personal or professional needs. So again, what to learn? It will be the subject matter. In this case, we're going to think about languages in plural, not necessarily English, but we're going to say the what to learn is languages. The where to learn is on the subject's context. How is this learning going to happen in his context? So this independent act of the student to be able to question and making things happen will be able to help him customize his learning. Finally, when we talk about the social dimension, what we were saying now with Alex, it is important that we consider that we need to learn autonomous, but not alone. We are not going to learn by ourselves. We need to learn together with others, along with other people. Because sometimes we think that because it's autonomous learning is alone, lonely, me, myself, and I. But now we are going to see that there is a synergy between autonomy and metacognition. This synergy, we are going to look at it as metacognition is this motor that moves autonomy, okay? So they need to go together. It is impossible, excuse me 1 second. It is impossible for a student to become truly self-regulated and autonomous learner without metacognition. Metacognition is what is taking you here tonight. It brought you here to this web conference. It's telling you, I need to learn this, I need to learn that, I need to talk about different things. So that process of thinking what I think and what for do I think it, with what purpose, then that is the metacognition part, helping to move that motor of your autonomy. Metacognition isn't just a related skill, it's not just a skill, it's what it really empowers the learner to become autonomous. So metacognition is something that we need to help our students to light up. Nowadays, we are talking about agency in our students. We need to promote agency. When we promote agency on our students, we are telling them that they need to learn this and this. We give them facts or we give them info, but they need to go find information by themselves and come back to the classroom with something they found, something they learned. Then again, they are not going to be only the recipients, they need to become active in this process. We, for many years, have been just passive learners. The professor talks, the teacher says, the student listens, and that's it. Now, we need to have our students become active in their learning process. And one of these things is to help them work on their metacognition. Well, I want to use these different colors. Why are you using them? You know, we need to try and empower our students to be more thoughtful. This also provides the framework for self-direction that we talked about. And now I'm going to show you a little bit of how this metacognition process directly enables the actions of an autonomous learner. So when we look here, it says metacognitive regulation. One of the regulations, the first things that a student needs to do is plan. In consequence, what will be his autonomous action? Setting goals, right? So if the student plans for something, then he will have learning objectives, setting goals. So if a student is monitoring his process, then he will end up choosing the correct strategies that work for his learning. Because again, not all strategies work for everybody. Here, if we talk about evaluating, is reflecting and adjusting. So in the metacognition part, we see planning. In the autonomous action, we see setting goals, monitoring, choosing correct strategies, and evaluating and reflecting and adjusting. If a student is learning English and he is particularly having a difficulty with the speaking ability or conversational skills, then he evaluates how his process went. He's going to reflect on the strategies that he chose, and maybe they're not all as effective, so he can adjust them for his next process. So the learning process is always a cycle. We are always learning. We recycle what we know, put in new things, and it goes around and around. We can never consider ourselves done project. We are always in the making. And the same happens to our students. So here, how do we foster autonomy in the classroom? How do we foster autonomy in the classroom? So these are two things that we need to do. We are going to mention 4 different things that we need to do, but one that I would like to mention is acknowledge heterogeneity. We need to embrace diversity, motivations, beliefs, learning styles, and goals within the classroom. So when we embrace this diversity that comes with different motivations, different beliefs, different learning styles, different goals, all these things, we are able to not only help our students learn and be conscious that there is no one size fits all. In the ideal world, we should, be able to give our students activities personally based. So when we do individualized learning, we should be able to tell our students, here, this is for you, this is for you. But unfortunately, we don't have that time given to the constraints of our educational system. But yet, if we become conscious of that, we can pace our class and pace our classroom to be able to acknowledge and embrace this diversity. When I talk about diversity, I'm not talking about gender or things like that. I'm talking about learning diversity, motivations, beliefs, needs, how they learn, what they want to learn, why they're learning. So effective facilitation starts with understanding and respecting individual learner differences and tailoring support accordingly. Like I said, unfortunately, we cannot tailor every single class to every single student's needs. Because in a real world classroom here in Colombia, we have 35, 40 students in a classroom. There's no time for individual tailoring. But yet, if we find this student who needs special help, that we do have those types of students in our classroom, we can take a little time and focus on that particular person at one point in time. So now, when we talk about the model metacognition, this modeling metacognition to foster autonomy in the classroom, we need to make thinking visible. How about thinking aloud? You cannot tell a child, okay, think about this. How can you evidence that this child is indeed thinking? So we can have a thinking out loud protocol to demonstrate these problem solving processes. And through games, through different activities, we can use this think aloud protocol to model metacognition. Have our students recognize that there are learning strategies that they can use. When we tell them exactly what to do, you can tell them, you can go here and look and say and do this to be able to finish here. The student will be more concrete in what he is looking for, and he will be able to empower himself and recognize the power he has through a thinking with purpose process. So our students say, no, but I think a lot. I'm always thinking. Yeah, but why are you thinking? What is this thinking helping you for? So it's call our students to reflect upon that. Also, when we talk about fostering autonomy in the classroom, we need to promote self-reflection. Go and by yourself, reflect on these things that you've done. We can integrate activities that foster self-awareness. How do I like to do this? What can I do to improve that? Learning journals. Maybe they can write, I learned this today. I didn't learn this because this and this happened. Once the student is conscious about his learning process, he will start reflecting on how he can do better. And that's the idea. The idea to promote metacognition in the classroom is that we will have, in the future, better thinkers. So right now that we are adults and we've already passed through the educational process in our country, Probably nobody ever told us that we needed to use metacognition abilities to learn. I no, I never got that information in school. Nobody ever told me, oh, you need to regulate your emotions and you need to think about how you learn. And nobody ever told me that. But now we have the opportunity to make a change. So that's precisely why we are studying these masters, to be able to have our students change their mind, change the process. And so we can have them reflect on their strengths, their weaknesses, how they progressed, and which parts have been awesome. How can you reflect on something that you did very well? Well, I learned this very well. What did you do to get there? If they start thinking about how they did it, then we are promoting and fostering this autonomy. Because it's not, I did it because the teacher told me, but I did it because I used these and these steps to solve my problem. You can give students simple problems and have them resolve them. How can you solve this problem? Use your imagination. See what answer can you come up with. Also, you need to involve learners in the decision making. Step by step, little by little. Start with small choices. And I know that we teachers don't like to give control to students because sometimes it gets out of control. But if we promote self-regulated spaces for learner, then if we give them these small choices, okay, which colors do you want to use? Do you want to use pastels or just regular colors? Do you want to write on your notebook, or would you like to write on this sheet of paper? Give them little small choices. If we are going to do our reading plan lector, then maybe we can give them a different books. Choose from here. You have to read. We choose the books. We know the level of the book. We know the content, but we give them the choice. I give you these 3 different books. Which one do you want to read? That little by little, we can expand their options, and students will be more motivated to get involved. So we can have them take decisions based on the small things that they can do, like materials or maybe activities. Maybe we can present 2 different activities. What do you want to do, this one or that one? Or I have 2 songs for you. Which one do you want? Which one would you prefer? Would you prefer to sit in here, to sit outside? Just all these things that we can do to help them build this sense of responsibility over the way they learn, over the way how they want to take the steps to take them into this learning process and this language acquisition. So to close up, it's important that we think about empowering our students for language learning. So when we talk about metacognitive knowledge, it's fundamental for us to acknowledge that metacognitive knowledge is fundamental for independent learning. So we won't have an independent learner without metacognition. So that this needs to be used hand in hand, little by little. We are going to prioritize the learner's psychological relationship with what their education process is. So trying to tell the student, well, you are in school and you are learning this because it's important. In the future, you will be able to. So if we speak to our students and we have them reflect upon why they are studying, then we are on the way to train them to be more self-directed. We can empower students to become active, strategic, and successful lifelong. this is a process that will help them, in our case, in our context, to become lifelong language learners. But out there in the world, if they use metacognitive knowledge, they will be able to be autonomous learners just about anything that is out there, because they will be able to follow the cycle of thinking about thinking. Why am I thinking? What am I going to learn? Which steps do I need to take to achieve my learning objective? Which strategies I'm going to use? Finally, I evaluate my process and check my outcomes, readjust, y vuelve y empieza. It goes like that. So this is basically what I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you. That was
Okay.
more clarifying for me because yeah, when I was reading, I start thinking about my work and as a teacher and as a student, and I concluded that I have been in undergraduate program for 5 years, and if you ask me about metacognitive strategies that I use, I would say I don't know. I don't know because I haven't learned about metacognition strategies. So when I was reading, I said, "Oh my goodness, it should be one of the main reasons why we study is to learn how to think." That was what you're saying, and that was my first thought about that. I said, "Oh my goodness, I don't know about metacognition strategies. If I, I don't know what to say about that." But then I said, as a teacher, I should know them to teach them, my students, to be strategic, to be more independent, and to be more successful. Unless, when they say like, yeah, when a student is getting good grades, and not only good grades, but they are knowing that they are learning, they feel motivated, and they are going to use more strategies, they are going to look for things, and when we are students get like, no, that's a failure, I made mistakes, I don't know how to say, I don't know how to do it, I don't know how to pronounce, I started feeling like, I don't know how to do it. Maybe como que soy como brutico, como que no quiero hacer las cosas. So it is like a low motivation for them. So actually, we are, like me, this topic is very interesting to learn and to apply. So yeah, thank you. You just clarified
Definitely.
many of my doubts.
You're welcome. Yeah, definitely. We are, teachers are forever learners. We need to mm, live with that, embrace with that idea, because we will learn throughout our life. Every day we learn something new from our students, from our colleagues, from whatever we are studying, because we will be forever learners. And if we can apply metacognition strategies to learn independently, because sometimes now we don't have as much time to go and sit in a classroom, and nowadays life is very hectic, we don't have as much time, so probably we just decide to study, online like we're doing now. So we need to have these metacognition strategies clear for us, and try and empower our students little by little, depending on their age, depending on their needs, considering all those things. How can this that I'm learning will help them in their future, so that in the long run, these students will be more effective learners when it comes to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and more active citizens, right? Because we are very passive citizens. And
Right. We
I
need to
believe
be,
that's because of that. We are very passive students.
yes, students are very passive, but that is just because of how our system has been taught, and how the system is. So now we as teachers need to change the way how we approach teaching
Yeah.
and learning, so that we'll be able to change those things. So I really appreciate your time. Ovidio, did you have a question or a comment?
Okay, teacher. So I consider the core of this encounter was the self-directed learning, no? And the basics are two, the metacognition and autonomy. And I was wondering, as the peer here, I was wondering about my work as an English teacher. And I consider very important because, for example, in my own experience, I made the high school in a distance modality and the career at university. So my first time in the traditional education was at school as a English teacher. And I can see, for example, my students, they don't have enough autonomy because of the traditional education. We usually are talking for them, please do that, don't do that, okay? And I have the opportunity to recognize the importance of autonomy in order to help them to take care of their own learning process. And I try to do something about that. On the other hand, for example, in my case, in this interesting master program, I want to focus my research project about that, autonomy or metacognition, this kind of learning, because, well, I was trying to apply different kind of strategies with the students, and I am seeing interesting results regarding autonomy. For example, I give activities for them. They can work in the house, at school when they want to do that. And, well, the advance is interesting about that. But I am really interested about this topic, and of course, I thank the teacher for this presentation and Alice and Fernando for your opinions here. This is very important for me too.
Great, thank you. The idea is that yeah, we learn from each other and we get to share different points of views. And if you are thinking of working on autonomy, I advise you to choose your population, choose who you want to work with, and start looking into that, into what exactly do you want to work on autonomy. If it is like speaking skills, if it's reading comprehension, if it's grammar, vocabulary, you need to focus, because the bigger it is, the more difficult will be to work on your investigation program on your thesis. So what I recommend for you is to choose a population. Your investigation should arise from a necessity in your context, right? So when you see that necessity, you will be able to identify with who you want to work with. If it's going to be seventh graders or eighth graders, bueno, whatever you want, but try to make sure and use a specific grade, so that your population is controlled. All right. It's good that you're exploring, because through observation we are able to find necessities. So it's good that you're observing, but try and start narrowing down exactly what you want to do, and so that you don't have information all over the place, because then it becomes more difficult to manage. Okay.
Yes,
Fernando,
thank you, teacher.
you're welcome. Do you have anything to say, a comment?
Teacher and people, Ovidio and Alex. For example, in my case, I teach in a high school, public high school. And these boys and girls, they are very difficult people. And most of them, they don't like to study. They don't want to study. And sometimes I tell them, you cannot imagine that because you are coming here to class, you are learning. It is not to study. You have to study when you are at home, when you are in your life. And they say, no, no, no. We are resting in a house. We don't want to study anymore. And I tell them, no, but to rest is not to do nothing. To rest is to change the activity. Here we do some activities, but you have to do some of the activities down there. anyway, it's something that we have to be motivating the students every day.
Definitely. Definitely, because nowadays our youngsters are a little bit more independent in many ways, but very dependent on technology, on AI, on everything else, and they don't like to think that much. They are, but that's just not their fault, because it's just the way society is right now, and they have everything to, to the reach of a click. They click, they can get anything. So also happens with learning. They think that by just being there, some miraculous way, they are going to just learn something, but it doesn't happen. So motivating them and giving them reality checks is important, but try to do it with a purpose. Okay, so we worked on this today. So now you are going to go home and do this and this and this and that. And not like a regular homework, but like going to a website or going to an AI and find this information and tell me what you found, and then we'll discuss it. So try to make them move. They need to be encouraged to move. Otherwise, they'll just sit there and be very passive. So thank you very much for your attendance, for being here so active, and I'll see you around. If you need anything, please, you can email me or talk via Teams. Okay, you guys have a good night.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
bye bye bye
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Okay. Bye bye. Good night for you too.